fail. Go ahead and fail. I feel like, at least for me personally, that was one of the hardest parts getting back in, was knowing I hadn't done it in so long and being so afraid that something that I was always felt was so good at, and especially when I was younger, I was cocky about how good I was at it. I knew it was gonna be gone. It's like, especially you play a sport, you pitch for 20 years and then you don't pitch for 10 and you try and pitch again, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna be like it was. And getting and again, I started off with a medium I never worked in. And the early drawings, I still have them. I still look at them because it's always, I like to compare, to see the progress. And I think the failing in the beginning can really ignite you, because then when you start to succeed, it makes the success that much better.
Today on The Flame, I'm excited to welcome my friend Rusty Bargeron, a senior business analyst in the healthcare industry by day and a talented illustrator by night. With a degree in illustration and graphic design from Tyler School of Art in Philadelphia, Rusty has spent years balancing a practical career with his passion for art. We'll talk about how he keeps his creative spark alive while working in a less than creative environment and the ways he channels his artistry into his life outside of work. Let's get started. Hey, Rusty, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bob. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing good. It's really good to see you. I haven't seen you in a good long time, but it's good to see your smiling face again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Absolutely. So why don't you, for the audience out there, I know Rusty. I've known Rusty for a long time now. Actually, his wife and I worked together in what seems like a previous life, right?
Yeah.
I got to be at your wedding, and which you just had your anniversary, right? Happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. 16 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Goes by in a blink.
It does. I know I'm 17. I'm only a year ahead of you. But as time would have it, kind of people get on to other things and life happens. And but it's good that we could stay connected through social media. And now that kind of when you reached out to me, now that the podcast has kind of brought us back face to face, even if it is electronically, it is great to reconnect. So why don't you kind of fill me in on what you've been up to?
Sure. I guess I've been, well, with the same company now for 24 years, work in healthcare. It started out as kind of, I want to say, a BS job. I was in college. I needed money. Got a job as a file clerk. And over the last 24 years, I've held many, many different positions and found unexpectedly a career out of this. And it's something that I would have never in a million of years expected or even wanted 20 years ago. But it has been a good thing in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So, for college, when I was in college, I actually went for art. I went to Tyler School of Art. I got my BFA in graphic design and illustration. And when I came out of college, I was starting to try to be pretty much a print illustrator.
Mm-hmm.
I did watercolor paintings. I was trying to get into magazines and different types of illustration and editorial illustration. I also did some watercolor paintings for gallery work and was in galleries for a few years. So my job in the healthcare network was supposed to be a way to pay some bills.
Right.
And it essentially went from file clerk. Then I got involved in a billing department because I needed more money. Once I got out of college, it needed to make a little bit more money. Then I met my wife, Rachel, and after a couple of years of trying to be an artist and doing freelance work, it wasn't paying the bills. It was, you work 20 hours, you get paid $150, and then you got to pay taxes on it. Kind of stinks.
Mm-hmm.
So went for another job and kind of was able to keep learning and keep kind of advancing my career at Einstein as a means to an end. That's originally how I saw it. And actually, our paths are kind of tied. And part of the reason I wanted to reach out to you, because this is kind of where my creative journey and my creative struggles really came in. When your old job, when you worked with Rachel, when they shut that business down and you guys got laid off, that was 2010, I believe.
2010. Yep.
Yeah. So obviously that creates havoc in your life. Yep. And for me, I mean, as the spouse, it's, I don't know what she went through, but it still it's still a lot for, I think, the people that love you as well. And when she lost her job, we thought we were in a great little place, and we thought, okay, we're going to get through this. And then everything else in our life went to crap. Just we had to deplete our savings because all of a sudden our roof was leaking. Then our hot water heater sprung a leak, and then our HVAC unit, which was our air and our heat, went, and that was all within the 11 days of you guys getting laid off. So it just kind of, things started to pile on and on. And we got through. It took her about a year to find out work, and at that point, I was very grateful now to have this job that I saw as a means to an end, because I was able to have a steady paycheck, have something that I could count on.
Right.
Yes, it was big business, but it at least allowed for that to come in, and I was able to get her health care benefits, which was something I never really thought about. You're young, you don't really think too much
Sure.
about that. She was getting them from her previous employer, and it was a blessing that we could do that. And then the funny part, where this all really started to come down for me, was about a year later when she found another job and she got her new job. It was a little less money. It was further away, so now we had gas. We all of a sudden we needed a dog walker, because she couldn't. Before, she worked a mile from the house. She'd stop over at lunch. I'm sure you remember, and take care of our pup, who
Yep.
was the world to us.
Yep.
And all these little things started to add on, bills that we didn't have before. Again, now I'm paying for her health care. Now we have this. Now we have that. And it got to a point where at my job, I actually went to my boss and I said, hey, ironically enough, with her employed, we're almost worse off than when she was unemployed and working part time for different people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I have to look for a new job. And the nice part about big corporate is, apparently they're never paying you what they actually think you're worth. And they came back
Yep.
right away,
Corporate America.
and because they didn't want to lose me, and they offered me a very, very nice increase. And that was 2011, and it was a bit life changing, especially at the time. And the reason I mentioned all this for a creative journey is because at this moment I started looking at things, and I realized, all right, I'm working hard, I'm making these advancements. Thank God I had this. Thank God I was able to do this. This was a big game changer for us.
Mm-hmm.
And all that extra time that I had been putting into art and doing sporadic illustrations for magazines and gallery shows and going to First Fridays and Second Saturdays and whatnot, started to become, trying to think of the word I want to say. I was reluctant to do it anymore,
Hmm.
because I felt like now I needed to commit to this, because God knows what the future was, and I felt I needed to commit to my family. So
Mm-hmm.
around 2011, I decided I was no longer going to pursue those things, and wasn't because my wife asked me to. She didn't want me to not pursue them. I just looked at it
Sure.
as going, all right, I felt like a failure. Here we are, years into our relationship. I knew there was no chance, if we hit a bump on the road, that I could support her doing those things. And it had been my dream since I was a kid. That's all I ever wanted to do. I told everyone when I was 5 years old I was going to be a comic book artist, and I was looking into colleges for art my freshman year of high school. There was nothing going to stop me from doing that.
Right.
So, you grow up and the world changes, your world changes. And it was depressing. So, from a career standpoint, things were going better, and I was doing well in my career, and I found ways to be creative there.
Right.
And that's actually one of the big things I do now is, around this time, I also started helping us migrate over to our first EMR. So we had to take an old system and figure out how to make it work with a new system.
Mm-hmm.
And I work primarily with the schedules. So right now I work with over 700 physicians and designing their schedules, and I try and figure out ways to use different analytics, um, for our patient population to design a schedule using what the system gives me,
Mm-hmm.
to meet the needs of the physician and also meet the needs of the patient. So it was a interesting way. Like from a technical standpoint, I actually kind of broke the system that we were going to. I went against all the recommendations of those of the people who actually wrote the system and designers when I got trained by them. And I feel like I've done a good job, because I've been brought in to consult with other major hospitals around the country about how
Right.
we do things, since they work better. Um, and I guess that kind of, it started going in my head that, all right, I don't need to be an artist to be creative. There are different avenues to pursue. And I love my metaphors. I always feel like these are the best things, and this is how I talk to a lot of very uncreative people. Physicians are very, very data and just tunnel vision with how they see things a lot of times. So being creative is not always there,
Right.
ironically.
It's a lot more black and white for medical
Yes.
professionals.
So for me to explain what I'm trying to do, I find that using weird metaphors tends to work the best, especially when explaining a complex system and backend and how it works and what I can make happen and what I can't make happen. So for my personal metaphor is I start to look at it this way, and it being the season. If you're going to decorate a house and you have the same house and the same 6 Tupperwares full of Christmas decorations, and you give that to 10 different people, you are going to get 10 very different results.
Sure.
Some of them are going to be very chaotic. Some of them are going to be pretty much typical. But every once in a while, you're going to have one that really blows you away with what they did with what they had.
Right.
And is really cool. And I started thinking of it that way. I can approach things and just kind of do what's out there. Or I can start trying to think outside the box and do the best with what I have. So that led me on this kind of journey I've been on. And then one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to this podcast was I always thought that that was a good thing. But I'll be honest with you, I missed art. And I even had gone through when I was starting to do this, I got rid of my art desk. I turned the one little bedroom that we had that was my art studio, we turned it into an office. My wife wasn't a big fan of me getting rid of my art desk. I had it since I was 13. And I was like, nope, we don't have a lot of space. I can use this better for this stuff. And I actually didn't draw from 2011 through 2017, which I can't believe. I went every day of my life drawing. Yeah. I just put it aside. And, things went on and on and on. And, you start thinking about other things that'll make me happy. I'm like, was able to be creative with work, and then just always kind of disappointed at things. It was ironic. We ended up moving in 2017 to our current house, had a little more space, and you get a new house, you got a lot more bills. So couldn't go out as much and do things. Was trying to save some money, so I would sit down like, how am I gonna occupy myself? Got a sketchbook for the first time in years, and actually started doing sketching again, and found that wow, I lost a lot of talent. Definitely, if you don't use it, you lose it. And started to get back into art. And then I started to realize that it was kind of fun to not have anyone assign me anything, and to not try and make money off of something, and to just create to create.
Right.
And started getting into color penciled art, which I never did before, and started doing that for a couple of years. And then it really took off when we hit the pandemic and we were all locked in. I made a decision. I ordered a bunch of cheap markers from Amazon and some marker paper, and I was like, I am going to draw nothing but markers on this little 5x7 doodle pads until the pandemic is over.
I know. I saw all your artwork.
Thank you. So now it's been 5 years almost of doing it, and I've done about 1,500 little mini illustrations.
Incredible.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel like in life, the big lesson I came away with is, even if you're in a completely boring vanilla office job, there are ways to be creative and ways and avenues to bring something new to the table. Right. And being creative and being a creative person, if you go back to what truly sparked that creativity, if you're not successful and you can't monetize it, that doesn't mean you're a failure. I always looked at myself as a failure. And now I got to tell you, I am the happiest I've ever been as an artist. People have asked me and tried to commission me to do things. I've turned them down. I don't want that anymore. I listen to my music. I do my little doodles, and I smile. And out of the 1,500, I'm probably 200 or 300 I'm actually happy with. The rest of them I think are just a lot of junk. But you know what? There's no more pressure, and that was the best thing. And I feel like creatively, I was in a place of pressure, and it's taken me 15 years to learn what works for me. But here I am, and I guess that's a very long way of who I am.
It's an amazing story, and it's perfect for the whole reason I started the podcast, right? Which was, you get into the corporate world as an artist, as a creative, and your head's down, and you're solving other people's problems, or you're focusing all your time and attention on certainly things that are ways to pay the bills. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can tend to lose a little bit of, whether it's identity or just kind of your creative juices after a while. And you find that, like, I literally just had a conversation the other day with on another episode where the thought of doing something that brought you so much joy could bring anxiety or feelings of, depression or whatever, things that almost make it a negative experience. And so you put them aside for what? Right? You put them aside for money, because you need, to live. Certainly there's things that you have to do as an adult, but what I'm learning is that the things that you're passionate about are the things that kind of are worth it in the end, right? It's not really about the paycheck when it's all said and done. So, I mean, it sounds like, you've done a complete 180 and it took you some time to do that. Do you find that now that you've rediscovered or, just come to, come to peace with your creativity and how it brings you joy? Do you find that like it's helping you at the day job? Do you find that now that you've rekindled that creativity, you're finding ways to bring that back into your day to day?
Absolutely. It's actually it's altered my view also on career success. So I've hit a point where I feel comfortable in what my skills, my job, and whatnot. And I know most people, especially in corporate America, you want to go higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. You
Mm-hmm.
keep trying to reach the tippity top. Um, I've decided that's not something I want to do. I have found a work-life balance where I have my job, I have my work, and for me to go any higher, I know that's going to mean that maybe I'm working an extra 5 or 10 hours every week. Right now, I'm very fortunate to work from home. With other positions, I would probably have to go in and spend more time.
Right.
My commute used to be an hour each way, so that's another 2 hours out of your
Yeah.
day. So when I think about those kind of things, it's yes, I could definitely try to advance my career and make more money and do more things like that, which sounds great, but how much time would it kill, and where would it
Mm-hmm.
leave me uh, creatively in my extracurricular time? And I know that that would go away, and that's what I've found peace in doing. I'm able to turn my brain off with my current job. I'm comfortable with everything that's going on. That I can walk away from it and pretty much each night sit down with my little sketch pad and watch a movie and doodle for a couple hours and find that kind of satisfaction. So I have found that balance, um, and I'm comfortable with the point where I'm looking at things, and obviously we're adults. We have responsibilities. There's bills you need to pay. But I've also realized that money isn't the greatest thing in the world, and I could work an extra 20 hours, make a lot more money. Um, what's that good for?
Right.
Maybe I don't need a bigger house. I'm happy. Um, when I get just when I'm fortunate enough to take a vacation, go from coach to first class. These are things that to me don't really seem that worth it when I have hundreds upon hundreds of hours I get to draw and be creative and satisfy that itch.
Right. Um, do you feel, and like you're probably one of the most passionate creatives I know, right? Because you're one of the only people I see that consistently posts their artwork online, whether it's Facebook or Instagram. And, you know, there are times when the algorithm shows me a lot of your stuff and times when, I haven't seen one in a while. But so was there, like a specific piece that maybe you just, it kind of helped you re-inspire? Like, I know that you do a lot of the markers and you dabbled in the pencils, um, and now you're kind of, having people come to you, maybe wanting to purchase your art. But was there any kind of piece that you sat down and you did that was really like kind of kicked it back into gear for you?
Yes. There's probably two pieces. One I can think of is it was a color pencil piece that I did of a mermaid. Um, it sounds ridiculous.
Magical.
I don't really care about mermaids. I have nothing that I really feel. But I decided that when I was first starting back out, I was like, you know what? I wanted to practice doing what I think hair would look like underwater, and I wanted to use I was learning how to blend colored pencils, and I felt like it was one of the first times that I really enjoyed what I did. I actually have it framed in our bathroom because I loved it so much.
Where
And
else
then
would you
the
put a mermaid, right?
exactly that's it's got to be the place it goes. And then the other thing was it's not so much of a piece but an experience. Um, During the pandemic when I was getting back into this, and at first it was just drawing to draw just because I had the time and I was at home. Then I saw, and I'd never seen it before on, well, again, Instagram, Inktober. Are you familiar with Inktober?
I'm not. I can't say that I am.
So it's a movement in a lot of in the artist world that I can't remember this. Somebody started. Um, I think they started in 2017. That essentially they give you a list of prompts during the entire month of October, and
Okay.
you're supposed to do black and white drawings based off on those prompts one a day to keep you drawing and keep you active and to encourage that
Mhm.
kind of community. And so 2020, I decided to try it. And I gave myself my own little challenge. I said, okay, not only am I going to follow these prompts, but because it's October, all of them have to be some form of spooky. And I wanted to
Love it.
do spooky art. And that was like an assignment from school again, but with no pressure, no deadline, no hard deadline that I had to meet, nothing on the
Mhm.
table, no one to disappoint. It was just me in my head and what do I find, you know, this word like crawl means in spooky and what do I want to do? Um, and I had a blast doing it. I had a ton of fun, and it reinvigorated me to the point where I all year long I get excited. Like, okay, when's October's coming? I get to do the Inktober again. So even if I've fallen out
Mhm.
for a couple weeks, and I haven't drawn much. It's like, all right, get your hands going, get ready because you're gonna have a lot of fun doing this. And it's even spawned this year. Rachel decided because I always get disappointed when it's done. She's like, well, why don't we do something for Christmas? So she wrote me up a prompt list, the 12 days of Christmas.
That's awesome.
So I'm working on that right now, and every one of the prompts, I again gave myself my own little challenge. I said, okay, each one of those prompts also has to be from a specific Christmas movie. I have to draw inspiration and put that into it. And it's really, I feel like that was just, it was a way of kind of feeling like I'm doing the art that I want to do, but I still have that kind of like college assignment thing, but
Right.
without the worry of letting an editor down or an art director not doing the right thing, and having no real deadline. I mean, I technically, yes, you're supposed to post on these days. I start a couple weeks ahead of time because we all have
Right.
our jobs and
Who
responsibility.
who knows?
Um,
You post it when you post it.
exactly. So that was a it was weird. I would never expected that to really light a spark in me, but it was just this little challenge, this little challenge that I didn't have to do. There was no pressure to do, and when I actually just took the time to do it, it just yeah, that's where that little fire kind of came in my heart.
Yeah, there's something to be said for doing a little bit every day, right? One of the the guys I've become friends with through LinkedIn was creative mentor for me. He's worked at very many high end creative shops throughout the world, but his daily practice is to just sit down and write 20 ideas every day. Starts his day with it, just notebook, pen, paper, 20 ideas. Doesn't matter what it is, right? It could be an idea for a t-shirt. It could be a line for an ad. It could be, you know, anything. But it's just repetitive practice of the thing that you're good at and the thing that brings you joy. And it sounds like, you've kind of started that with, giving yourself those little assignments, and it sounds like it's become more of a habit for you where you know it's fun to do and it kind of keeps you going, keeps you motivated. um how has that translated into life outside of work for you?
Hmm, it's a good question. I'd probably say it's. I think I'm just a happier person, and I think the person who probably notices it the most would be my wife. I
Sure.
don't think any of my friends notice much of a change, but I think she can see some of the giddiness when I'm doing something. Um, for today, I was showing her something. I stayed up a little later last night working on something when she went up to bed, and I wanted to show her this morning. I was working on a scene for one of the prompts, and she always makes little gingerbread houses at Christmas. and
Right.
the scene has a bakery. So I hid her gingerbread house in the bakery. So I was excited to like look at the little idea I had. I put your little
Right.
gingerbread house that's on display in our house, and in this time in this drawing of this, it's probably to draw it about half inch by half inch, so it's very tiny. But it's so I think she sees that kind of stuff out of me, which that absolutely would not have been there before.
Right. Do you think that I feel like one of the things that happened to me when being out of a job and was the sense of, identity that you put, whether it's in your job or the things that you're passionate about. So do you feel like you've refound your identity, or that that the art is now your true identity, and you don't have to worry about what you're doing in your day-to-day job anymore?
Absolutely. So again, I talked earlier about finding ways to be creative at work and how great that was, and it made me realize that that job could actually be a job that I could do and pursue long term. Um, as far as an identity, though, when life changed for me was, yes, finding that passion again. I had. I mean, I remember being a little kid. I would get yelled at by my dad, like when he first got his first computer and he ran his own business. And he had his printer. I would steal all the printer paper and do
To draw
drawings
on,
on the
right?
wall. Any kind of big boxes he would get delivered because he was a photographer and he would frame his own work. So he'd get some big UPS boxes with frames in them, and I would cut those boxes up and I would try and see how many X-Men I could draw on a box. And you couldn't give me anything without me drawing. There were still He stopped wallpapering one of the walls in my room because when he was redoing my room when I was about, I guess it must have been 8, I just started drawing on the blank wall. Figured, well, he's going to put something up over this anyway.
Right.
I think he just gave up because it was just you couldn't stop me, and that's how I was in high school, college, everything. You couldn't stop me. I mean, in college, we'd go to Denny's and drink coffee to 4 in the morning, and I'd have a sketchbook with me for 6 hours, just drinking coffee and drawing in it, and it had nothing to
Right.
do with my assignments and my work. It would just be sitting there hanging out with my friends, and that's what I did.
Right.
So losing that and going all those years without actually creating anything, without actually drawing and with any kind of purpose, even though life was good. I was doing well in my career. I had my wife, I had my friends, I had my family. Everything was good. There was definitely a part of me that was missing, and getting that back was huge. And realizing that who I am creatively does not hinge on how much success I have with it. Because again, I always thought that would be my career, and
Right.
I judged myself by that very harshly when I was younger. And letting that judgment go has it's a weight off it's been a weight off me.
I can
That's for sure.
imagine. I can imagine. So you think that I know you've said that you're kind of in a place of contentment with your art and with your creativity. Um, do you think, do you ever see a time in the future where, now that you've stabilized how you feel about your art, that you will maybe pursue, pursue it more as a career and not just a creative outlet?
I don't want to say no. Possibly. I'm still hard on myself, and I don't think like what I'm doing right now. I don't think is good enough to be out there in the world so much. I mean,
Spoken
maybe
like a
fun.
true artist.
Yeah.
I bet
I've thought about.
Michelangelo thought the Sistine Chapel sucked.
I'm actually debating on trying to get an art booth in the next Doylestown Arts Fair,
Cool.
just to bring. Again, I have 1,500 of these things. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with them. I actually started taking all the ones that are monsters. I'm making a monster wall on my first floor. So one whole wall of all these framed little monsters. Because what that's the other bad thing is, what are you going to do as an artist? God, I have closets just full of sketchbooks and just so much stuff. So I'm debating on maybe doing something like that and trying to sell it, but not for too much gain. Like I'm not going to go here trying to sell these things for $1,500. I'm thinking like 5, $10. Hey, you like it? Great. I want people to feel like they can see something that they like, spend $5 on it, put it up in their kid's room. The kid doesn't like that character anymore. They toss it. Fine. No sweat off my back. If somebody got some joy out of it for a little while, that's awesome. The other thing is too, like, I don't know if this will be the medium I want to work in. I've bought some clay, and I've never been very good with 3D, but I want to start trying to sculpt
Yeah.
and see what I can do with that. So ask me again when I'm 60.
I think the great part about art and creativity is that you're never locked into one medium, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
you go from drawing to working on a computer, doing design, to working with your hands. I did that as a way to get myself out of a rut back in, early in fall, was to just do things with my hands, and like whether that was make decorations for my Halloween display, or try to, sketch some pictures, or just do something where I felt like I had complete and total control over what I was doing, And so I don't think you should feel locked into, hey, oh, my medium is pen and ink, that I can't switch it up. Or if I start as pen and ink, people are going to change their opinion of me because I've gone and tried, something else, right? Even our favorite musicians change how they sound and change the, the instruments that they use or whatever. I can remember it was kind of a big deal when like Dave Matthews Band put out an album that was more, electric guitar than acoustic, right?
Or when Bob
Um,
Dylan went electric.
sure, So I think it's you just go where your art takes you, and people will follow you, because I do think you're a really great artist.
Thank you. And I agree. And that's the one problem with the world I was trying to break into is illustration. Um, you need to the style I was using. Looking back on it, I felt was a little forced because I was trying to create something very unique. And even at that young age, I was still learning how to work within the style that I was creating.
Right.
It was always a challenge. Like, oh God, I have to do a bookshelf. What does a bookshelf look like in my style? What a bookshelf looks like if I just want to draw it, I know. And that's kind of where I am right now. Everything I do is just, I'm not, this I guess is a more authentic me and what I am. It
Right.
might not be as interesting as some other people. Like I think about like Tim Burton. That is a style
Yeah,
right
you do.
away. Exactly. And that's one of the big things that was um impressed upon us in college was you need to be unforgettable. You need this kind of style. And I again, magazines and whatnot, they want painting. They don't want marker a lot of times. It's very rare that you become successful, at least back then, um, not using a traditional medium. I think of like Ralph Steadman, who was ink. But you look at Steadman's work and it's crazy. You're never going to
Right.
forget that.
Right.
Um, so I got into watercolor, and that's a rough medium. And I think that was one of the frustrating parts. It was very difficult to work and create these things. And again, I'd go to work for 8 hours a day. I'd have my 2 hour commute. I'd come home. I'd have a job. I'd be working with an editor. And again, this is 25 years ago. So it's not as quick with text and whatnot that, there's no FaceTime. There's none of this stuff. I don't have email on my phone. There's no smartphone. So I'm getting home, logging in, trying to see what they said, scanning drawings, sending them over, getting a response a couple hours later, and then staying up to 4 in the morning working on something to get it to them so I don't miss any deadlines, just to leave at 6 a.m. to go to my job. And it was frustrating. So
Yeah.
I just went on a weird tangent there. I'm sorry. So yes,
No.
so being able to change styles and change mediums is nice because again, it gets more of that creative bug out.
Right.
When you're even as a creative person, I think when you're forced, no, it doesn't matter how good you are at it. When you're forced to do something, not everyone's meant for that. And I found that I'm just not. I thought I was. I'm not. It didn't bring me satisfaction.
Right. Because you feel like you have to conform or put yourself in a box for certain things. Um, yeah. I mean, as far as um, kind of the value of creativity, like how do you, what do you think is the value of creativity in everyday lives, not just for people who are, trained creatives like you, but for people who don't see themselves as artists? Is there ways for, or, advice that you would have for people that are maybe in similar situations where like they feel like they have this other calling, or they just feel run down and want ways to um, re-energize themselves?
Yeah, I think that what is creative is such a vast spectrum, and so many people don't realize what they do is creative.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you be somebody who just bakes, or just the art of cooking. There's so many different things that you can do to be creative and put your own mark on things. And it's so cliche. You got to find the joy, what brings you joy, and
Right.
to continue to do those things. Like, if you ask my wife, is she an artist? She's going to say no. I think she is. One of her favorite things is making these little gingerbread houses every Christmas and doing stuff like that. And she loves a good spreadsheet. And we're going on vacation in a couple months, and
She's a planner. My
she's
wife's
got
a planner.
yeah, she's got a giant. She has one of my old sketch pads. This huge, like it's like 16 by 20 sketch pad,
Well, she's a
and
great
she's
account manager.
made her little grids about where we're going, where we're going to eat, what ones we need reservations for. It's color coded, and it's something you could do in Excel. But she has fun, and that brings her joy, and all those little things, to the point where her dad got her a little plaque that says, uh, "I have a spreadsheet for that," that she
Yeah.
has to keep at her desk. People have their names. I have a spreadsheet for that, and she uses it at work to help organize things, and I know doing it for her is enjoyable, especially when you get a good result and people actually can follow it, and you've made someone else's life easier as well as your own. And then
Right.
she also does it at home, whether it be our vacations. What she's right now, one of the ones she has is, what are we cooking for Christmas dinner? What do we need? Where are we going? And just finding, she adds a little artistic creativity to how she organizes herself,
Right.
and I think that's awesome. And I feel like maybe it's with photography, maybe it's maybe it's with the way you groom a dog. It brings you joy, and you can find a way to be different and execute something, um, that maybe someone wouldn't have thought to do. I just think that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just goes back to your analogy of the Christmas decorations, right? Um, Given the same set of tools, you're going to get a whole bunch of different ways of viewing things. Um, and I think that is good advice for people who, like yourself, that were struggling with your own style. It's good to emulate people that you look up to or admire in terms of style, whether that's art or whether that's, design. But eventually, the more you do it, the faster you'll find your own style and your own voice for things. Have you thought about, now I know you said you're trying to get a booth and things like that, but what about self-publishing, like digital, posting things online? I think that maybe back when we were in school, there was less availability to do that. And now, is that something you've thought about? Maybe like self-publishing and just putting prints online?
Yes, I'm torn on that. So, I mean, back when I was trying to make a life out of this, I had websites, and it was mainly to connect with different, publications and editors and art
Mhm.
directors. And I had, again, back in 2011, when I shut it down, I shut everything down. Um, I do Instagram now. I don't hashtag. I don't really do much. I'll do the hashtags during Inktober, just because it's a way to. I love being able to click on them all and see what all these other artists around the world are doing for it. I think that's one of the coolest things. It's just people coming up with these crazy ideas, stuff that I wouldn't have thought of, and being able to share my vision. And it's neat to interact with some of those artists. Um, as far as self-publishing, and again monetizing it, it's scary to me, because it changed my view of things. And that's why I thought about the booth, is just kind of a way to talk to people about art, because I love to talk about art. And if someone wants to buy it for 5-10 bucks, hey, then I don't feel like, because I guess there's always an imposter syndrome as well. Like,
Yeah.
you want to charge what you feel you're worth, and then when you find the first time you get that, you're almost like, did I rip them off? But then you think about all the hours, the countless hours that went into creating that, and it went into developing those skills, and it is worth it. But the imposter syndrome still sits there, and that's why I guess I said, like, with this medium, I'm kind of looking at it. I'm like, I'm not good enough yet. I'm
Right.
not good enough to charge yet.
Right.
Uh, and when I was younger, I probably really wasn't good enough. Although people did pay, which was shocking to me. Um, but I
Yeah,
just
you're
felt
not
like,
you're not holding them up. You're not trying to shake people down. You spent a lot of time and effort learning. I remember watching a video from Chris Do. I don't know if you know who Chris Do is. He's like a design influencer, and he talks about the business side of design. And, should he be penalized because he can do something fast and well at the same time? Or should he charge less because it only took him a short amount of time, and that kind of puts him in a bind, right? So you spend all that time learning, training, discovering, and it's worth something. It doesn't always have to be uh, monetary, but certainly in a case where we're talking about potentially making a career out of your art, out of your creativity. Yeah, I think it's just you should feel good about what you've done, and also putting a value on that.
No, and you're absolutely right. And then it comes down to also, what are you doing for the community when you sell your work? Um, by lowering your price and lowering your value, you do lower other people's. It's almost like the housing market, and what are the comps for your neighborhood?
Right.
Because you can see, especially at this day and age, graphic design, photography, all the traditional arts are fighting such a battle. And you really saw it, I think, at first time with photography. My dad was a photographer when digital came about. And you didn't have to worry about film. And you could see your picture and what you took on that. There's not people sitting there so concerned. You lost a little bit of the art of knowing what you were capturing and what settings to put on the camera, and knowing how it was going to turn up, to being able to envision that, to crop that, to set that picture up. Now you take 2,000 of them and you take the one you like, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to when you had a roll of 24 shots, you weren't going to see it for a few days. And how was it going to turn out? Was it going to be in focus? Was it going to be underdeveloped? Was it going to have bad lighting? And that started to, people were able to lean into that and kill a lot of really great artists. For me, for illustration, one of the big things that happened was with the internet. The first boom was all these kind of stock sites, and that was something that we were encouraged not to do, but a lot of people did. Is you would take your portfolio, all this work you had, and you could sell it to a stock site right out of college. And I could have, and they would pay you like $5,000, which seems astronomical at that age, for
Right.
50 of your illustrations. And they could then use them as much as they wanted and not attach your name to it at all.
Right.
And a lot of people did that, and a lot of companies would start doing that. Instead of paying you hundreds and hundreds of dollars, they're just going to have this stock subscription and grab whatever they want for whatever
Right.
article. And now you see it with graphic design, and all this AI. And so many people think they're designers, and they can just, everyone has access to Photoshop now, and
Yeah.
the apps on your phone and what you can do. But when you actually see a real illustrator, a real photographer, a real designer sit down and do it, you realize there's absolutely a reason to still use these people.
Yeah.
If you want the most creative and the best thing, and you want to put that kind of product out there.
Right.
Uh, but again, everything's volume now. It's just getting stuff out. And I'll be honest, it worries me. I worry where creative world is going. I almost feel like we're all going to get replaced, and then things are going to get so standard, and no one's going to be creating anything anymore. That people are going to go, "Oh God, what the hell's going on?"
Right.
There's no more art students coming out, and then someone's going to come up and do something by hand, and there's going to be a renaissance. I don't know if I'll be alive to see it, but
Right. Right.
so I guess
It's like the clothing industry, right? Fast fashion is,
yes.
the wave when people are just, they buy things, they wear them, they discard them. It ruins the quality of of the clothing. A pair of jeans isn't like a pair of jeans from, maybe 20 years ago, right? So I was going to ask you about AI and how that has changed your opinion of your artwork, and if that's another medium you've thought about, or if you just um, are like vehemently against learning that on principle.
No, I like to use my hands. What I do is I have one app on my phone, and again, I'm not trying. Most of the pictures I post, I don't even have a scanner anymore. I don't put them in through any programs. When I'm done with my drawing, I take it to a little ledge in my house that I think has a good white balance, and I hold my camera above it, and I take a picture of it, and I crop it out, and that's
Right.
it. It's really a poor man's way. I mean, I used to have much better ways of uploading my artwork to computers. And again, it's because it's about being simple and having fun. But I have one app that I like, and I will almost always put filters on. I'll do like three different versions. So when I
Mhm.
post it, it'll be, here's the original. Sometimes I'll do, here's the black and white version where it started, and then here's three fun filters because I just thought they look cool.
Right.
Um, but I will tell you 99.9% of the time, I still like my original better than
The
those.
original's always
Because,
best.
yeah, because I look at them and I see stuff like that. I see
Mhm.
so many people who have taken stuff and put it through a filter and used their phones or used an app, and why it smooths things out. It covers up blemishes. I like the blemishes. I like the things that make it unique. Again, um, are you familiar with Ralph Steadman?
I've heard the name, but probably not as much as you're into it.
A weird. Here's a weird look. Can you, by any chance, picture the poster for Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the movie with Johnny Depp?
Yes.
That is Ralph Steadman.
Okay.
He did a lot of artwork for that. He was actually very close with. He was friends with Hunter S. Thompson. Um, if you look at his work, it is so chaotic
Yeah.
and it is beautiful. And if you put that through a filter and messed it up, it's just, that's what it would be to me. It would be messing it up. It would be taking some of the joy out of it. Like one of the things when I did painting, when I was a watercolor painter, I did ink as well. And one of my favorite things to do was ink splash, or like just splashes of ink. It was similar to Stedman. That's where I
Right.
got the inspiration for it. And finding different ways to do it. And God, the one you had to, like, I cut little pieces of paper and put it over a face. Like, I cannot have a giant blob of black ink hit this little face. It'll ruin everything. So then you have to think about that. And then, all right, how do you do it? So I would get bad bent quill nibs. I dip them in ink and you just flick it. And then I started using toothbrushes, old toothbrushes,
Oh,
and
cool.
that would get you a different type. Sometimes just use an eyedropper and try it from different heights. Made a mess, made an absolute mess. But sometimes that chaos was some of the coolest part. And now you get this auto-generated chaos in these apps, and it's just, there's an algorithm. It follows how it's designed to do
Right.
things. And you can put the same picture, you can put it in, see what it would look like, cancel it, and then do it again, and it's gonna look exactly the same. There's nothing. It reads the lines and it reacts. And again, that looks cool, but after a while, I find it to be honestly boring. I know people love it and they think it's interesting. To me, it just gets boring. I've seen it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. I started messing with it when it came out, kind of playing with Midjourney, and very similar to how you did the Inktober and doing the spooky stuff. That was my creative outlet for a while when feeling stuck at the time. I think Midjourney came out 21, 22, something like that. And just seeing how it has progressed is pretty scary. Like
Yeah.
what it was able to do when it first came out to what it's doing now. And you still see, and now I'm seeing a lot of video, right? So it's gone from just photo illustration style mimicking things to now you create an image that you want, you prompt an AI video editor, and it can start to generate things that weren't even there, right? And it's pretty crazy, but it's like you said, it's still very easy to tell what is
Yeah.
AI and what isn't.
And
um,
I'm not against it. I definitely think it's so much fun, and I feel like people should use it and enjoy it. Where I'm afraid is how many of people like yourself and myself are just going to be replaced by it because people think it can do a better job, and I don't think it can.
mhm.
And I feel like putting it in the hands of a creative is incredibly powerful. Um, but again, there's something about our brains and how we function. I don't want to. I like seeing how you view the world, not necessarily how something that you gave some data to thinks you view the world.
Right.
And that will always be for me personally just far more fascinating. Again, I love to see people create and do that stuff, and it can absolutely be a game changer in a lot of areas. Um, but you look at even let's look at a lot of movies now, like animated movies. They're starting to all look kind of the same,
Hmm.
and people are using it's there's these trends. But I think about when we were younger, growing up. Um, you think about movies that were probably not kids movies, but were told were kids movies. Like you think about Labyrinth, Dark Crystal, Nightmare Before Christmas, Coraline, Wallace and Gromit. All these, you start looking at all this different type of stop motion animation, or Charlie Brown, and how that was done, with the Grinch and the original style that was done in, and they're so unique.
Hmm.
Now you look at stuff and it's just most of it, to me personally, is kind of overly done CG and like kind of AI stuff where it's just, and I feel like it doesn't always age well. Like I know people love Polar Express. Polar Express is one of the creepiest movies I think
I
I've
just
ever
had
seen.
one of my daughter's friends just told her, like, because they did we she sang the song from the movie at her most recent recital, and one of her friends was like, I don't like that movie because it creeps me out. The artwork creeps me out. And
They
looking
don't
back,
have
yeah, it is kind of
souls.
it is kind of creepy looking. But then you have a movie like Jurassic Park that holds up, and I think still looks better than any of the CG stuff that
Oh,
comes
and
out.
absolutely, and you think about, again, a director I loved. I loved the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. If you watch The Hobbit, they relied way too much on CG. Like when they were using the forced perspective originally, and was such a great trick. And yeah, you could have very well easily done that with CG, and it's probably a hell of a lot cheaper now.
Hmm.
But using those old tried and true methods are amazing. It's just I don't know if you there's a what is I can't remember if it's on Netflix. It's like the story behind the movies, and there's one on Elf. I just watched it the other night. It's
Just watched Elf.
fantastic,
Yep, love it.
and it's all the different force perspective tricks they used to make Buddy the Elf look so much bigger. And when you see it behind the scenes, it's just so to me, it's so beautiful and so creative, and just all these practical effects. Even to like theme park rides. There's with Pepper's Ghost is on the Haunted Mansion, where that's how they make all the dancers look in the ballroom scene is by
Yep.
reflecting off a glass,
Right.
and it's so neat. And again, yeah, you can use CG for all this stuff, and sometimes you absolutely need it. You absolutely need it. There's no way to create that, but it's so cool when you work it in with that practical effects as well. And I think that's where the creativity really comes when you start leaning too much on these programs and computers and design things. Yes, there's always going to be a creative element because as long as we're involved, as long as mankind is involved in it, um, but there seems to always be an answer, and maybe it's not always the best one. I like when you're working outside the box and when you don't have a computer and you're trying to think about what the answer is. I still believe there is an answer, um, and I feel like getting to that answer is the fun part.
Yeah.
Figuring it out. How am I going to do this? How am I going to make this look? What is this effect going to be?
I just listened to a podcast the other day where the person being interviewed was um, you know executive creative director, has jumped around, worked at all these big agencies, and had somebody on the team that loved just coming up with ideas. They realized that they found joy in the ideation and not necessarily the ad that was created. So it was, and then when that goes away, if things change or accounts change or you get a different position, um, then you kind of lose a little bit of what you loved about. That's why I hear so many people say, "Oh, they hate they hate advertising, they hate working in advertising," um, and it's like, well, do you, or do you just hate certain aspects about it, or maybe you're just having a bad day or something? But it's really, you know, kind of what we've been circling around here is that you know our daily jobs can really take a lot of the passion out of our work, right? So
Absolutely.
I guess that leads me to my next question: is if someone is feeling, I'll say, creatively stuck or disconnected from their passion, um, what would you what would you tell them to help them reconnect with their creative spark, kind of based on what you went through?
Fail.
Love it.
Go ahead and fail. I feel like, at least for me personally, that was one of the hardest parts getting back in was knowing I hadn't done it in so long and being so afraid that something that I was always felt was so good at, and especially when I was younger, I was cocky about how good I was at it. I knew there it was gonna be gone. It's like, especially you play a sport, you pitch for 20 years and then you don't pitch for 10 and you try and pitch again, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna be like
Right.
it was.
Right.
And getting and again, I started off with a medium I never worked in. And the early drawings, I still have them. I still look at them because it's always, I like to compare, to see the progress. And I think the failing in the beginning can really ignite you because then when you start to succeed, it makes the success that much better. Um, for me, actually, an exercise I like to do is, so when I started this again in 2020, when I moved to the ink and I gave myself this little challenge, I go back every year in March when I started it, and I look at one of the drawings I did from the first couple months, and I draw it again how I would do it now, and color
That's
it
a cool
now, and
exercise.
just
That's a cool exercise.
and
Yeah.
it's something that I, when I look back, I go, oh, I thought this was really good at the time, and I look at it now, I'm like, man, that was crap. Look how much better I could do this now, and it's
I
just
used
that
to do that.
reminder
I
that
used to do that. Find
it's a
things from
great
when I was a
reminder.
kid and redraw them.
Yeah, and it shows you how far you've come, and I feel like that's another thing about being creative is when you can see those advancements and you get that personal satisfaction. That's huge for me. So I would say, yeah, if you're struggling to do it, just not don't be afraid to fail. Fail. Go ahead, fail. Start
Yep.
something. Take a chance. Do something out of your comfort zone, and let yourself fail. And because once you've done that, you can just go up and you can finally move forward.
That's awesome. That's a great piece of advice. I think everyone's afraid to fail or afraid of what's going to happen. And it's another theme that has been popping up in these discussions I've been having is that, so many people, the reason why they've stopped or put things aside is out of fear, or, they're scared of something. And what I've learned is that if you're scared to do something, do it anyway and do it scared. Right. I mean, it's funny how, like, talked with 5 different people now, but a lot of the themes are the same here. So I applaud you for coming to that conclusion and to, being able to get past your own fears with your artwork and just, enjoy it and enjoy the process. So to that point, what's next for you, Rusty? What's next for, whether that's art, whether that's, career outlook, what do you think is next for you?
I really don't know, but I guess
And
the
that's okay.
one thing I think is next for me is I think I'm rounding out after doing. I was I think I was trying to figure out. I think it's about 4 to 5 thousand hours worth of these little drawings is what I've put in over the past couple years. Um, I think it's time for me to fail again and try something a little outside of my
Love it.
comfort zone. I got a block of clay sitting upstairs I've been staring at for 2 years with my cheap clay tools, because that's what I'll always start with, the cheapest crap I can find
That's how
off
you start.
Amazon.
Right.
So I don't feel like so when I fail, at least I'm not beating myself up about the cost of it. But it's literally sitting in my guest room on a little cheap turntable I bought for it. It's in a Ziploc bag to keep some of the moisture in it, and I see it every week, and I keep going. Soon. I'm not done with that yet. Soon. And I think that's probably what's next for me is
Do you need an
to make some
assignment?
really.
Do I need to give you an assignment? Do I need to text
First thing
Rachel and tell her to give you an assignment for that?
I just want to make something that looks like it's supposed to look. Whether it be a little bit of a face, even if it looks alien, just something get somewhere where if I put it online, people would recognize that it's supposed to be, a vase or a cup.
Yep.
But I think that would be what's next for me is to finally stop dragging my feet and to go ahead and fail at something else and see if I enjoy it.
I expect posts Rusty Claymation next week.
Give me a day after the holiday. I got to finish my 12
Okay.
inch
All right. No, that's awesome. So I appreciate you coming on and kind of getting caught up with you. And, it was, like I said, it's really great to see you again and to hear that things are going really well. And I look forward to, keeping in touch and seeing your journey as you go. And would love to have you back on at another time to see
I
how things
love
are
that.
going.
I wish you the best, and I think this is awesome. It's so
Great.
cool to actually be able to sit down and listen to a bunch of people a little bit commiserate and a little bit just talk about what helps them through the day.
Right.
It's cool. You never know where you're going to find the best piece of advice and inspiration.
Yeah.
So thank you
Well,
for putting this out there.
absolutely. I appreciate you listening and coming on, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Rusty.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks to Rusty Bargeron for being a guest on today's show. And thank you for joining me on the Flame Podcast. There's definitely more to come. Please take a minute to follow, subscribe, or hit the like button if you haven't done so already. And if you have any feedback or you'd like to be a guest on the show, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you.